Hey guys, it's Maymay, and as requested, you guys asked to see how I made this card, and I am going to make it for you. It's really easier than you might think, and I think you're going to love how it works. It is one full sheet, but you could do this with multiple sheets, and I'll give you a tip as we get going as to how to do that. But let's make this card. So to save time, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the cut dimensions for your cardstock. So these pieces are 3 3/4 by 3 3/4, and you need 3 of them. But I have this habit of cutting me an extra one because we're going to do some embossing and do some, kind of lengthy work. And if I make a mistake, I don't want to have to cut another one or go back and do it. And since I already had to make these, I went ahead and cut an extra. Now, I don't stress about cutting an extra because this guy is big enough to be used for something else. So he's not wasted even if I end up not using him. So there's that. Then you're going to need, these guys are about 1/8 of an inch, maybe slightly wider, but I measured it on my Cricut trimmer about 1/8 of an inch. You just eyeball it. And I need 6 of these, and these are going to run under the bottom of that red panel. And this one, I already have embossing powder everywhere. This one is the star of the show. It's a 12 by 12. Well, it's not 12 by 12. It's 12 inches long, and it's 5.5 inches tall. So the situation is this. We're going to score this every 4 inches. So we're not going to make a traditional A2 size card. It's going to be 1/4 of an inch narrower, but it's going to fit in an envelope, and that's the beauty of it. So let's score this first. So in our scoreboard, so easy, what we're going to do, we're going to score this at 4 inches and at 8 inches. That's the only score marks we need to make. Now, it's important that you do this, and here's why. Number one, you can't get 4 1/4 3 times on a 12-inch piece of paper. And secondly, it's just best for the way the card works if you just have a simple fold like this instead of cutting pieces and pasting them together. However, you can do that if you have to. So if you don't have 12-inch long paper, you can cut these panels at 4 1/4. So you can cut 2 of them at 4 1/4 and 1 at 4 inches, and then you can glue them together and get the same effect. But for me, this one in particular is better with the 12-inch paper. So I hope that explained that. I think it did, but you can always, attach pages together to get this length if you need to. Okay, so this guy, I'm just going to put him aside for now. He's ready to go. Let's work on our embossing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and treat these whole squares with my powder tool to try to keep the static and the oils from my finger down, okay? So I'm just going to take my little powder tool here, and first I'm going to rub them. I'm doing a lot of embossing, and I find that if I don't get a good coat of this or a good rub down of these cardstocks, then this embossing powder, no matter what I use, kind of goes everywhere. So here, I'm just going to do this little rub down of the paper. For some reason, this seems to work, but anywhere my fingers go after this, I have to retreat. So there's that one. And I'm going to go ahead and do all 4. Again, this is not hurting that extra piece of cardstock, so if I end up not needing it, it's fine. No one will ever know I already treated it for static. And this is just the rub down. This is not the official treat. I just wanted to do this as an extra. You'll see what I mean. We're probably going to struggle with a little bit of embossing powder because embossing powder, as you know, likes to go everywhere and stick to things it shouldn't. Okay, so Misty. I'm using my Misty on purpose for this one. I think it's important unless you're really, really good at stamping. And you might be able to get away with using like your press, like one of these guys, like the Fisker's press. I still have the word Josh on there. But you might be able to get away with using your Fisker's press for something like this. But for me, the Misty works great. All right, so I'm going to move these magnets out of the way without getting them too close together. Put one right there. I'll hold one in my hand. Okay, now what we need to do is get our stamp set. The stamp set we're going to be using today is the one called Still He Came, and we're literally going to use every stamp on this sheet to make this card. That was my challenge, so I think it's kind of fun to challenge yourself sometimes. Let me show you what we're going to do first. Okay, so with our embossing, we're going to emboss this ground on 3 pieces, okay, because it's the same on all 3 pieces. Other things change, but the one thing that stays the same is the ground on 3 pieces, okay? So what I'm going to do is go ahead and stamp and emboss the ground piece. Now that paper moved a lot, so I may add another magnet because I do not want my paper moving. The other thing I want you to pay attention to. So I've got this right here, right? I'm going to use this ruler to my advantage. I'm coming in 1/2 inch. So every time I place my paper, I'm going to put it 1/2 inch away and then magnet it down. and my other magnet is here. Okay, so that'll help hold everything in place. I might put it right in the middle. Now remember how I told you that was the first powdering? Here's the second powdering. I'm going to use a lot of powder on this. I do not want extra embossing powder anywhere. All right, so now that I've got that laid out where I want it, I can come this way so you guys can see me use the Misty. And I'm going to ink this guy up. And I will go, you know, off the edge and back on. Like I'll go further, I'll ink further out than I really need is what I'm trying to say here. But I'm going to spend some time inking because I want it to be nice and juicy. All right, so we'll press this down. Spend some time on that. Get that in there really well. Okay, and then I'm going to do it again. I did this because I'm trying to get a nice full coverage. So I'm going to ink it twice. So this hillside is ready. So I'll move this out of the way. Pick this guy up. And you see that tiny sliver that's going to be left? You probably can't see it yet. There's a tiny sliver I'm going to have to cut away. Not a big deal. All right, so I'm going to lay this to the 1/2 inch mark right there. I'm going to add my magnets. And I'm using a lot of magnets because I don't want this thing moving. I'm going to powder. Sometimes I over powder, but I'm always worried about, I don't want it everywhere, you know. All right, and I'm going to ink and then stamp, and then I'm going to ink it again. If not being able to get to the very, very edge of this bothers you, of this piece of paper, you can use your Misty corners and bring it away from the edge. But for me, that little tiny sliver just doesn't bother me that much. Because if I have to trim it off, you're not even going to notice the size difference. All right, so there's that one, and now I need to do one more. And the reason I like this is I want my hillsides to be in the same spot. 1/2 inch there, magnet here, magnet here, magnet here, powder, okay? Woo, I'm really powdering it. Okay, ink it up. Flip this over. Also, if it bothers you that you're inking on your little mat underneath, you might want to put a piece of paper behind this. I don't ever really stress about that unless I'm using colors. When I'm using the Versamark, it's not going to go anywhere, so it doesn't bother me. But if I were using like red or black or something, I would probably put paper behind it. Okay, there we go. These guys are ready to heat emboss. So I got this scrappy piece of cardstock. I'm going to rub some of the powder on it. I find that this helps whenever I'm pouring the powder back into the jar to keep it from sticking too much to the page. And I'm going to go ahead and fold this in half. So I will be ready to use it to dump that powder back into the jar. All right, so that is for behind our work. Here is our hillside. And I'm going to powder it. I'm just using the Glacier White embossing powder from Nouveau. Any white will work. I was going to use my Brutus Monroe, but I cannot find it. I think I have misplaced it since Made It Con. I cannot find it, so it makes me sad. Either one works though. They're both great. All right, so now you can really see that little stripe I'm going to have to cut away or leave it. I actually don't dislike that little stripe, so. All right, sometimes I'll do this to kind of pick it up off of the paper. You don't have to because you're going to pour all this back into the jar anyway, but sometimes I do that. And because we powdered so much, we ought to get a really good result. I'm not seeing it hang out anywhere it shouldn't be. All right, last one. See if we can scoop some of that up. Yeah, see that? See how it's not really sticking? This is powder, by the way. See how it's not really sticking anywhere else? That's awesome. Okay, that's ready to heat emboss. I got a little spot right there I want to try to grab some in. All right. Now this is important with this project. You're going to be heating these sheets, these cardstock pieces, several times, okay? So you're going to want to keep your heat on them as little as possible. You don't want your heat to stay on them for a very long period of time. And anywhere you think might have embossing powder that you don't want it there, you need to go ahead and clean that off. So I'm just hitting the little edges here, and I'm going to put this onto my tweezers, and I'm going to turn my heat tool on and let it heat up for a long time, about 30 seconds. So I want you to know I timed that 30 seconds of heating up, and you get a lot less warpage if you will do that on your paper. And remember, we got to do these several times, so you want to do that. All right, so all of my heat embossing is done here, and now we can go back and add the next elements. I'm just checking them again. All right, back to the Misty. Now a tip for you guys is this: when you're working with all this powder and all this embossing powder and your stamps, do not lay these down on your work surface. Put them away immediately. Anytime that powder picks up on the back of these guys, they're gonna lose their sticky, and you cannot be too careful about that. They won't lose it permanently. You can go wash it and bring it back, but if you're like me, I ain't got time for that. So that's why I'm saying make sure you pick up a stamp and put it right back and don't sit it down anywhere. All right, so the next part of the card we want to work on, let's look at it and see. So now we're going to be building this scene, and you notice that I've got this little like city scene and the star in the same place. I want to do that one next. I like to do anything I can do mass producing all at the same time. So I'm going to put this guy back, and let me tell you what's funny. As you get going, your little powder square where you've been powdering so much is going to help you to be able to see where to put everything back, but you can continue to use your little measuring there. All right, so I'm going to pick up the city, and I'm going to place it on this hill. Now here's the trick about the city. You want to place it just until both corners of the city are touching the hillside. That's it. Just barely overlapping the little hill. You're going to be able to see that you overlap, but it's not the end of the world, because it's on mine too. But by the time you get done, it's the last thing you're looking at. And what I'm trying to do is place this little star straight up and down over our city there. Okay. And then I'm going to pick this up. Good. And now I'm going to powder again everywhere that is exposed. All right. And then we're going to ink this and stamp it. All right. I'm going to do it again, but you want to be real careful and make sure you're not moving it whenever you're picking it up. Make sure your piece of cardstock stays where it's at. That's why I'm using extra magnets. You really can't use too many magnets, in my opinion, for this. All right, so that one's ready to be embossed, so I can pull it aside. If you've never embossed before, the cool thing is this can sit and wait on me until I'm ready for it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the second one over, put it at the 1/2 inch mark. They don't have to be perfect to the millisecond. Trust me, nobody's going to be going, this little city's a little off compared to the one on the other page. Nobody's going to do that, okay? So I'm going to powder. And then I blow off the chunky powder. If you notice that I blow in between, I just blow off the chunky powder because you don't really need that. You just need a layer there. All right, and then I'm going to ink this one. And I'm doing it twice. I get a better adhesion for my powder that way. All right, so these two I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss. I find that I mess things up less if I'll just go ahead and do them in little steps at a time. So if this is your Christmas card this year and you're making 50 or 60 of them, do these in sets like this, okay? So that way, you know, you go ahead and stamp them, then go ahead and powder them, go ahead and heat them, and then go back to the next part of the scene. So dump that on. If embossing powder sprinkles where you don't want it, it's not the end of the world because it can look like little stars. I say that, but I'm very, very picky about it. That's why I powder so much. All right, we're ready to heat those. Let's put this back in. No matter how careful you are, you're going to have powder on your work surface, and this is what I mean by your stamps. If you put your stamps into this, it just makes you have to go wash them quicker and bring that sticky back. So I'm being a little anal today about this stuff. I don't know. I'm not a messy crafter anyway. I don't like all the mess. So there we go. All right, I'm going to heat emboss these guys. Now I can just start to lay out my scene. Let me move this where you can see the card because we're going to mimic this scene. So I'm going to place this guy back in again, just like so. We'll move this kind of to the middle to hold that down. I'm going to powder it. You don't even have to do it in that order. I just did. And now I'm going to place my wise men. All right. So I'm going to peel them off of here. And they're each a little different. And you can decide which goes where. And all you have to do is make sure the bottom portion of the little feet of the camels is touching the hillside. And here's another thing. If you kind of bring them down a little bit into the hillside, you get a varying height, and that looks pretty too. It kind of looks like one is further along than the next in the distance or in the travel. All right, so this is going to be kind of close because I did not pay attention to the length to where my hillside is. You see how much further out my hillside is here? We're still going to go with it. It's going to be just fine. 3 of these guys will fit, so we're all right. And you might have noticed in classic Maymay style, I'm putting the wise men furthest out because the wise men came later. So they are the very first thing we're going to see that are traveling because they're still traveling. Have I ever told you this tip? If you use an eraser to move your stamps, they don't stick to it and they don't stick to your fingers. Isn't that cool? I'll just take my pencil and use an eraser and just kind of move these guys where I want them. And once I get them there, it's just a matter of picking them up on the Misty. I can see that I have powder on the cover of my Misty, so I'm cleaning that off with a wet wipe because that is what will get onto the back of your stamps. Okay. So I did not like how that picked up at the bottom. I'm afraid I won't be able to do a double stamp. So I'm moving that magnet down here to help me. And I'm going to hit that one more time because I feel like I touched that page a lot there. And stamp. This is a Make a Fuss card, guys. This is one that I'm spending a little more time on. Let me turn this where you can see. Spend a little more time on. But that's okay. Sometimes you need those kinds of cards. Okay, that was good. The paper didn't move, so I'm going to go ahead and do them twice. Perfect. I'm going to put these guys back on my sheet right now, again, in an effort to keep powder off the back of them, and go to the next scene. My next scene is the shepherd and the little sheep, and they are coming up the hillside. So I'm going to sit that there for a second while I do this. And again, they're going to stick to your hand. Take your eraser, take a pencil eraser, slide it into place. Get him where you want him. And then you can do the same with the shepherd. There we go. Pick them up. Powder and ink. Those are super easy. Now our last scene is the nativity. So it is going to go here. That's the first thing I place. The next thing I place is baby Jesus because I can stamp both of those at the same time. So I'm going to stamp as many things at once that I can. I love this baby Jesus. When you get this at home, if you haven't got this stamp set, when you get it, his little feet are kicking up out of the cradle. It's the cutest thing in the world. Okay, and then I'm going to put this little star right above the nativity. And the star, I'm using the small star now because we're at the manger. Before, the big star was leading them to the manger, and now we're at the manger. See how I think about this stuff? So that was my thought process. All right, and then I'm going to add this donkey on the hillside like he's watching from afar. I had a little more room in this one. You can play with that if you want to, but it's going to work the same. All right, so the bottom moved a lot on that, so I'm going to move this magnet down here. I'm going to powder, ink, and stamp. Now for the last part of our scene, we're going to add Mary and Joseph. And for the last part of the scene, I'm adding Mary and Joseph to the stable, or to the nativity, the manger scene. Put them in there like so. Pick them up, ink them, and stamp them. So there are our panels for our card. Aren't they beautiful? Now we still need to stamp the words on them. And I decided to stamp them by hand myself and just use black instead of more embossing. So I'll show you how I did that. So on my first, let's move this out of the way. So on my first panel, I stamped the Messiah has come again because the Messiah is already here and our wise men are traveling to see him, okay? So I used that saying or that sentiment there, and I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black. I think I get a beautiful result from this, and I think it looks really good on dark cardstock. And since we're using this red, and I got it, do you see what I did? I got it on the Misty so bad. So I'm just going to take precaution. I've worked too hard not to. So I'm going to clean that off. Press this down. And the beauty of this is I can stamp it twice if I need to. That looks really good. I don't think I'm going to need to. Just going to move this away and we'll go on to the next panel. For my next sentiment, I use the wording, still he came. And I put it kind of low down, so we'll have our sentence will kind of flow across the whole card. So one's kind of lower down. Pick that up. Still using the same ink for the rest of all of these stamps. Beautiful. That one's good. All right, one more panel. Now for the nativity scene, I decided to do Emmanuel, God with us, because he is with us, and he's right here with us. And I'm moving this one down a little bit. I have my star and everything kind of a little off from the first time. Won't matter. It works just the same. And then I also added this little sentiment that says, may his spirit fill your heart and home this Christmas season, right down here. And I was able to put it a little lower on my first one, but I'm having to move it up a little bit because of the way I did my hillside. But again, doesn't matter. They're still going to be beautiful. Get that nice and straight. Flip this guy over, and I can stamp this one multiple times. because I'm using my Misty, so if I have any trouble, I can do it twice. I am going to do Emmanuel twice. I feel like that bolder image up there, the bolder lettering, sometimes needs an extra little hit with the ink. Just right through the middle. Perfect. We're stopping there. All right, we can start putting our card together. We need one more piece. Remember I told you that I used every stamp set in this set, or every stamp in this stamp set? I need this little panel back here for the last sentiment. So this is 1 inch by 3 inches. So this one will be 1 1/4 by 3 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those pieces real quick. And I just put this one on a block. This is the one that says the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So I just put this one on a regular block. And I'm just going to stamp it on this white piece. So pretty. Perfect. Okay, stamping is done. I'm going to go ahead and glue this piece to that bottom piece, just like so, leaving that little border all the way around it. And that'll be for the back of our card. All right, let's put it all together. So now we have our panel that all of the pieces are going to go on. And I'm going to leave it flat for this. This helps me to lay it out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these pieces out in the order that they go. So the first one is the wise men. Wise men. The second one is the shepherd. And the last one is the manger scene. So that goes just like that. And that's how I'm going to glue these guys down, okay? So I'm going to glue them right where they are. I'm not going to use foam because I don't want to build any bulk inside the card. I'm going to glue them straight down with glue. Now, I got to tell you this in case you don't realize it. Oh, I got too much glue. Just wipe that out. No big deal. This piece has a little bit of a border around it. Okay, so I got a little too much glue on both ends down here. All right, so you're going to have a little black border running around it. It won't go right to the edge. You see how that little black continues a little bit? That's what you want it to do. Again, I'm going to go sideways so I can see it, but you can have that little black border at the top, and you just want to line these guys up as close as possible, like so. Let's do our last one. Then we just need our little silver strips. And let me show you what I did on this. So I took one strip and I laid it up against the bottom of the red cardstock. That's going to be a spacer, okay? The other one I added some glue to. Don't over glue these. Don't go, because you will have some seep out. That's going to happen. Then I just put this one up right next to that spacer piece. And I'm lining it up with the red sides, okay? And then what I did was just pick my spacer piece up and I used it again. So let me get that one rubbed down. Then I put my spacer piece here. I was very picky about this card. Very picky. I'm not normally this picky. And then add a little glue. Try not to get too much. Then I'm just going to place this down next to that spacer piece. Snuggle it all up together. And then I can pick up my spacer piece and these will be the right distance apart. See that? I don't know. I just had to do that. I felt like it just needed to be a little more precision, which I don't do precision. But for me, this one, I did. I had to trim these guys down to make them work. So I have this little scrap piece. I'm going to use it as my spacer for the last one. And then put this little guy down. Just kind of line him up with that piece there. Get them nice and straight. Now, we're going to be able to fold them accordion style, like so. Okay, I'm going to crease my sides. Just like that. I'm going to open this up to crease this back one. And then I'm going to flip it over and put my final piece down. I'm constantly wiping away embossing powder when I do embossing projects. Always. I don't care how careful I am. I always have it everywhere, just like glitter. That's why I steer clear of it most of the time. All right, this goes on to the bottom. And that's it. Our card is done. I love how these this card is so pretty. It really is. I just like opening it and closing it and looking at it. Let's bring the original one over. So they're similar, they're not exact, but it's hard to tell the difference. This is the one we did today. Isn't that pretty? I love how it turned out, so pretty. And we used every image from the stamp set, every single image. We didn't leave one behind. Here's the original, so I can show you that one in case you want to see it as well. But I love how this card turned out. I'll set it like this so you can kind of get the idea of what they do. I love how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you will be able to make it. And if you do, I want to see it, especially this season. I love to see what you guys are making and doing for the holidays. Head to our customer gallery on our website. It's at maymaymadeit.com. It's under the More tab. You'll see the word gallery, and you can share with us what you're making, your projects, what's even if they're not Christmas, any project you're making, I would love to see there. And don't forget, you can tag us on social media anywhere so we can see your projects as well. Just tag us at Maymay Made It, and we'll be able to see wherever you're posting. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're posting. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Have a great one, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.